Hey everyone, it's Samantha, and today I wanted to hop on here to talk about the differences between a root smudge and a root melt, and when you would have these discussions with your clients to help you determine which one would be a best fit for your client. I know I have a lot of root smudge and melt applications within my YouTube channel, but I wanted to go on here and actually help break down the reasoning and the why you would choose one over the other and which one would be a best fit for your client. So to begin, let's talk about the difference between a root smudge, or some people call it a root tap. So when you decide to do that on a client, obviously they've had highlights or possibly regrown highlights, and a root smudge or a root tap to me personally is just like a micro root. It is the smallest transition that will be made to help that grow out of the highlights from the natural hair color. So when I do a root smudge or a root tap, it's very minimal on the roots of my clients. So when I am separating their hair, the application is done like just barely tapping at the part line for each section that you make. So it's just a baby root tap. And by doing this, this allows more brightness to be brought up all the way to the root of the client. You would suggest this for a client if they are wanting the most brightness all over. They don't mind a stronger line of demarcation, even though you are creating a subtle melt. And when it's first done, it's beautiful. But obviously, all of it depends on your highlight placement, how many highlights you're doing, your foiling application. But if you are doing a traditional all over brightness where the foils, let's just say, are mohawk directly on the top, and you just do a baby melt, she will be brighter completely all over. So that will be for a baby root tap. So that will give them more brightness, but they will still have noticeable grow out pretty quickly. And also a lot of that depends on the client's natural existing level and what you're toning the highlights to. But you would also decide and communicate with your client to do a root melt or a longer root drag if your client wants more of a lived-in look. So something that is more natural, a little bit more rooty, as I like to call it. And a lot of that too will also depend on how you place your foils. So whether you are allowing more of the natural hair on top to fall over and the highlights are underneath, you will kind of already give your client a rooty look just by your foil placement. But when doing the toning application, when you apply the color on the roots for the root melt, the color is actually going to be dragged down quite further. And this will create a deeper depth in the hair and will allow a bigger transition from the roots to the highlights. So obviously if we're creating a melt and if you're just doing a little tap, the highlights are going to be shown more visible up to where that tap of that line that you're creating with your root melt. But if you are doing the melt and you are dragging it down further, you're going to have a bigger gradient of a transition from your highlights to the natural hair color. And this all is extremely customizable. Obviously, you could do root melts, root taps in a variety of different formulas. You can leave out the hairline if you want more brightness and you wanted the bigger drag in the back, and then you maybe wanted a baby tap around the front if you wanted more of a pop. So a lot of it is customizable, but the biggest thing is communicating with your client on what are they looking for maintenance for their color? How often are they wanting to come in? And a lot of that will determine, one, your foil placement, and two, whether you're going to be doing a root tap or a root melt at the bowl. And for a lot of my root applications. I like shades, EQ, and my client will usually process with that at the bowl anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes if I'm wanting a stronger deposit, or if I'm wanting a softer melt, I will usually do anywhere from like 7 to 10 minutes. And that all really depends on the formula that you're putting on the roots. So I will link below some of my top root melt application videos, but I'm going to also show you some pictures of the differences between like what my client looks like with a root melt, like a longer root drag versus a root tap. And I think seeing the visual difference will allow you to understand and better explain to your client. Because a lot of times when they show you these pictures, those are like key images to pick up on a consultation. So when you see these images and they are showing you this crazy brightness in the front, or the brightness is minimal and it starts lower at the eyebrow, those will be key indicators on how you're going to be foiling and how you're melting at the bowl. So a lot of it will be your finished work. So those are key takeaways when you are doing consultations with your clients. You want to go over their lifestyle, the longevity they're wanting with the color, how often they're wanting to come in, and what the grow out process will really look like. So if you have any questions on root taps versus root melts, drop them below. I'm more than happy to answer that for you. Ready to boost your profits behind the chair? Visit awealthyhairstylist.com today.